everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's speaker series. My name is Stephanie, and I will be monitoring things here on the back end. Just a couple of things to note. Our next speaker series will be on July 24th from noon until 1. Dr. Lynette Jones will be presenting Pressure Points, Protecting Your Brain by Controlling Your Blood Pressure. It should be a real interesting talk, and I'll get you registration information in our follow-up email. Towards the end of this event, I'll be sharing an event evaluation form, so please take the time to fill it out. We'd love to hear about other topics you are interested in learning about, and if you miss it when I share it, I will also share the evaluation in the follow-up email. That'll come out tomorrow. And so without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce James Giordani. He received his master's in social work from the University of Michigan with a focus on enhancing the quality of life and independence of seniors through technology. He has been teaching tech skills and providing in-home tech support tailored for older adults for over 8 years. James breaks down the confusing world of technology into clear, understandable, and interesting presentations, whether you're a tech novice or a tech master. And without further ado, James, I will turn things over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's nice to see all the participants here. I see some familiar names, which is fun. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head here. Worked with older adults in technology for more than 8 years. It's been by far some of the most meaningful and impactful work I've gotten to do. So I love my job very dearly. I work for a company called Ask Kevin, and our mission is to make it easier to live in today's digital world. Because that really folds nicely into the topic today and why this talk, for better or for worse, we're asked to do more and more with our phones, computers, and techie devices. And I'm going to have a special emphasis on a few devices and a few ideas that I think will particularly help folks with memory issues. Maybe they're experiencing some early cognitive impairment, or they're approaching something moderate or severe. I'm going to have little samples for everybody here. Normally, when I do these talks, I'm in a group and I get lots of feedback and questions live, but don't hesitate to throw your question in the chat. I'll make sure to try to check it regularly. I wanted to point out a few examples of this, of how we're forced to use technology. A few years ago, I was traveling and I was in Paris, France, and it was on the tail end of the pandemic. And it was in the Charles de Gaulle airport. And they were still doing contact tracing, but they were kind of the tail end of it, right? And they weren't doing it too seriously, but there are two lines at the airport. There is one line for the folks that could download the app on their smartphone, log in, create an account, do the little captcha, the I'm not a robot, where they tap on the dot and pass that. And then there was another line, and that was for folks who either didn't have a smartphone or didn't have the technical experience to perform all those rather complicated steps. I don't know if this kind of one was it. When I was going through that line, I was thinking, man, this is pretty unfair that we're forcing people to use their technology, but we're not really giving them the support they need. So hopefully with this talk, you'll have some ideas like, oh, that sounds important to me. That's something that sounds relevant to me. And that's an avenue I'm going to pursue here. I'm going to talk about a few things today. I'm going to talk about technology and older adults in general. I'm going to talk about modern scams and how they affect older adults. I'm going to give a couple tips to make your current devices friendlier. And I'm going to have a couple of suggestions for some new devices that might be able to help folks out. Whenever I give a talk, there are a few rules that I follow. The first things first is I will never say it's easy. I think it's one of the most frustrating things that folks experience. They call for someone for help. The kids are in town. They call the person on the tech support line and say, oh, it's easy. Do this. Google search it. It's intuitive. Figure it out yourself. When we hear that message and then we still struggle with technology, we tend to internalize that message and think like, oh, there's something wrong with me. It's supposed to be easy, but I'm struggling with it. Therefore, the problem's with me. But that's not true. So I'll never say it's easy. In return, the thing that I ask for you folks is no being hard on yourselves, especially when it comes to technology. And it breaks my heart. I hear it every day. Folks will say, oh, I'm so stupid when it comes to my computer. I'm such an idiot when it comes to my phone. And it just blows my mind when people say that, especially working around here in Ann Arbor. I'll work with like distinguished professors or successful lawyers, and they're saying, I'm so stupid. I don't think you're the problem here. I think there is a design issue that's making it a problem for you. And that's what I really want to stress, that it's never the user's fault. If you're struggling with your phone, with your computer, or other devices, there's a design issue that's making it challenging. Okay? So those are kind of the ground rules I laid out there. Today's challenge, because everyone has different tech experiences and different tech skills and different devices and different apps. So I can't really give step-by-step instructions for how to do everything. But I do want to kind of, again, give some broad ideas, point you in the right direction. Don't hesitate to put questions in the chat. And if you need the slides or anything, feel free to give me an email. I'm happy to share them with you. All right, cool. All right, since I'm not in person, I can't really have you all raise your hand, but if this resonates with you, maybe you'll feel it, but raise your hand if you used to do something with your phone or computer, but you had to run an update or buy a new device, and now the same process just doesn't work. I know Stephanie's smiling because she just got a new computer, so she's
Just
battling
got a
through
new
this.
work computer
Yes,
yesterday.
she's going through this right now. This is
Absolutely.
a common experience. Okay, this is the number one complaint I hear. I used to do this with my phone. I used to do this with my computer, and now some tech kid out in California forced an update on me, and now it just doesn't work. Another thing I hear a lot: you put your password into an account, which you know is correct, but the darn thing still tells you otherwise. Okay, all the time. I think passwords are a major issue, major frustration for folks, and I'll have a couple tips around those. And then finally, the thing I hear, you got help with your device, but the experience made you feel frustrated, embarrassed, or belittled. What I wanted to highlight here is just that you're not alone in these experiences. Again, it's never the user's fault if you're struggling with your technology. Okay. So I got a little tech story that I wanted to share with you guys. Um, it's for a company called Waymo. So while visiting Angela and Kevin, who are the founders of Ask Kevin, they live out in Silicon Valley. I took a ride in a wireless, excuse me, not a wireless, a driverless taxi. It was operated by a company called Waymo, which is a subsidiary of Google. In 2015, they gave the first driverless rides on public roads to a person with blindness named Steve. And so there's on the left is Steve on his the first ever public ride with a driverless car. And on the right is what a modern Waymo. If you ever go to Silicon Valley, Phoenix, now Atlanta, Austin, Texas, you'll see these vehicles. They're everywhere downtown, and they're pretty amazing technology. In October 2020, they were the first company to offer public rides without a safety driver, so no human involved, just passengers. Operate in a few places, and they do about 250,000 paid rides per week, totaling over 1 million miles weekly. Pretty amazing. Here's some pictures from my trip. The car had no problem navigating those up and down San Francisco roads. It had a really nice experience. You get in, it's a good evening, James. You push the button to start the ride. You can also tell it to stop, or you can call for help if you want to talk to a real human. And I even have, I hope this works. You'll see it. This is what the experience looks like going up and down the San Francisco street. It's pretty cool. You'll see there's no driver inside, the wheels turning. They stress quite a bit. Don't touch the wheel. Don't you touch the wheel. Um, they're a pretty amazing technology. They use a mix of radar and LiDAR. So radar is when you bounce a radio wave off an object and you can time how long it takes to get back to you. And that tells you how far away. And they do that with LiDAR, which is the same technology, except using the speed of light. So they're actually shining a laser off of buildings, people, etc. And then they're measuring based on the speed of light how far away that object is. It's a pretty cool technology. I got another video here for you. So this is what the computer sees as a screen. And so you can watch it. You can see the pedestrians crossing and the other cars on the road. And you look up and there it is. I didn't catch it on video, but I had an amazing experience where the car pulled up to a stop sign and there were some pedestrians on the side waiting to cross. And the pedestrians didn't go. So the car started to go. But then the pedestrians took a step into the road. So the car stopped. And then everybody stopped, and then the car went, and then the pedestrians went, and the car went. And it was just so amazing to see like such a human reaction where I think we've all been at an intersection. If you've driven and you like wave the person along, but then they say wave you along. It was happening in real time, except my driver was a robot. It was very, very cool. So the last video I have here, so just to show you kind of navigating those tricky terrain, those up and down hills of San Francisco. Very cool technology. I'm really excited about this service because I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for folks, especially older adults or folks experiencing memory loss. Yep, there we go. Coming up to the intersection, no driver, and away we go. Pretty cool. So, Waymo, I think this is an important emerging technology for a few reasons. One being that there are over 5 million professional drivers, so truck drivers, delivery drivers, taxi drivers, bus drivers, etc. That number doesn't include gig workers, so the people who work for those ride sharing services like Uber and Lyft as their like side jobs or part-time jobs. That's important because this is the largest employment block in the United States, and they're being threatened by this technology. So who knows? Maybe there'll be a significant reduction in these jobs available to us humans in the near future. Not to mention the potential impact of emergency rooms. About 40% of emergency room visits are due to car accidents. So this could actually affect our hospital system as well too. Kind of interesting. The ride itself was really smooth. It was a little zippy, like it accelerated quickly, but that's kind of normal because they're electric vehicles. It was a very affordable ride. It was only 17 bucks for 20 minutes, which, if you have to retire from driving or giving up the keys, compare that against the car insurance, the cost of the lease and everything. It's actually a pretty affordable option. Is it safe? In 2023, Waymo claimed only 3 crashes with injuries and on over 7.1 miles driven. And that's about twice as safe as a human driver. And again, as these robots get more experience and do more crashes, they're getting better at driving, right? That's one big difference between humans and machines is we're only going to get worse at driving as we get older, but these robots get better and better. So pretty amazing. And also, I want to point out, did you know that you've actually been working for Waymo for years? Anytime you see one of these I'm not a robot buttons with these little squares that you have to click on to prove that you're a human, they're all related to roads, so traffic lights, crosswalks, stop signs, etc. That's because Waymo actually uses this data to feed their autonomous vehicles, to help their autonomous vehicles learn what's on the road. So this all leads me to my first tip for older adults, and that is learn ride sharing. Okay. Ride sharing is just on-demand taxi services operated by an independent human, and again, potentially soon robots. Driverless options are available in certain cities. There's May Mobility here in Ann Arbor, but they have limited service. But Uber and Lyft are the largest companies, and they have apps available on all smartphones. And some other cool things, right? On-demand 24/7 rides. You can stay mobile whenever you need to go somewhere. It's available while traveling. If you're going to another country, every country has their own unique taxi cab service and customs that you have to know how to navigate. With Uber and Lyft, it's the same thing everywhere you go. There's a reasonable cost to it. There's no lease. You don't have to pay insurance on it. You can schedule your rides in advance. The GPS and review system holds drivers accountable. So your phone is being tracked. The driver's phone is being tracked. I remember one time I went for a trip in Washington, D.C., and a driver took me all around town to crank up that meter on his behalf. It was pretty unfair, but you can't do that with a ride sharing service. On top of that, you're supposed to leave a review after every ride, which gives the driver incentive to provide you a good service. Also, transactions are completely cashless, including the tips. And it's just a great supplement to dedicated senior ride services as well. Yep, 6.1 million seniors are non-driving in the US, and expected to grow a couple million in only a few years here. I want to point out that Lyft has a Lyft Silver app. It's specifically designed for seniors or folks with cognitive challenges. It's makes the text a little bit larger. It outlines all the buttons, so it's clearer to where you're supposed to tap. And it's just overall, I find it a more intuitive, easier to use application. And also, Uber has a hotline that you can call after you set up the appointment. You can actually, instead of opening up the app and tap, you can call this 1-800 use Uber line and get a ride yourself. So I've actually helped folks set this up for a person with cognitive challenges. We set up an account for them, and then the person just pushes the button on speed dial and tells the driver where they need to go. So very cool. I really like that they're making the service more and more available to seniors and folks with cognitive challenges. So my first tip for everybody is consider learning to use Lyft and Uber to help stay mobile for longer. Um, and tough because I'm not there in person, but feel free if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat as we go, and I'll take a little pause to answer them. But cool. All right. So taking a little turn here, I want to talk about technology and seniors in general. So I have a pop quiz for everybody. Again, sorry, I can't raise your hand and answer, but I want everybody to think about what is this symbol? If they saw this symbol on their computer or their phone, what should it mean? Probably some people are thinking, oh, that means search or Zoom, but actually that's wrong. It is a lollipop. And that's according to a client of mine, Rita. We were actually practicing how to download an app on her phone. And I said, okay, first thing you need to do is just tap the search button to find the app. And she said, there's no search button. What are you talking about? I said, well, what's the symbol here? She said, well, that's a lollipop. And when she said that, that kind of really blew my mind because she is 100% correct. If you take that symbol and put it anywhere else in the world, it totally qualifies as a lollipop. That's one of the challenges we have to deal with technologies. There are all these unlabeled symbols. It's like learning a new language. It's pretty tough. I got another quiz for you guys. What's this? You guys, a second to think here. A lot of you are probably thinking, oh, that's for settings, right? But if that's settings, then what's this wrench for? Sometimes I've seen a wrench, or oftentimes I've seen like three stacked dots, or sometimes the dots are horizontal, or they're three lines, or there's a 3x3 dots. It's like, why can't technology companies just settle on one? Pick one symbol and use it. Better yet, if you're going to use the settings pod, just write settings underneath it so it's clear what that means. Oh, by the way, it's a sunflower, according to Caroline. Cool. So seniors face some unique challenges in our society, right? Um, Giving up the keys or retiring from driving, that is a huge issue that many people see as a really big loss of a loss of their dependence. However, we talked about those services like Uber and Lyft that are great for keeping seniors mobile. Not to mention social isolation is a major killer. It is, if you are socially isolated, it raises your all-cause morbidity by about 30%. That means you'll live about 30% shorter life. However, you can still have robust interactions with your friends and family using social media like Facebook or a service like we're on now, Zoom. Now, it's not a perfect substitute for getting together with someone and sharing a meal. But actually, these social media has been shown to lessen the impact of social isolation in older adults. And not to mention mobility impairments. There's something like 8 million older adults that have challenges leaving their house due to physical mobility impairments. But you don't need to do anything at home these days. I'm sure many people have had a teledoc service, right, or met with their doctor over Zoom. I think that is a great option. You can get all your goods and groceries delivered with a service like Instacart, and you can even take care of all your banking online these days. If you ever go into a bank these days, it's like a ghost town, right? They'll have like one teller and one banker. That's because they want everybody to do everything online. But the question is like, why aren't seniors adopting these tech solutions faster? And that's essentially what the digital divide is. It's those who benefit from technology and those who don't. Unfortunately, the major groups that fall into the wrong side of the digital divide are older adults and folks with less income. So why is it so darn hard for older adults to adopt technology? First things first, there are major physical barriers. As we get older, our eyesight gets weaker, our fingers get stiffer, and we have changes to our memory that just makes operating the phone or the computer more and more challenging as we age. On top of that, there's tons of design barriers, right? Apple especially, they love their gray text on white background, which is not enough context, not enough contrast for folks to read. Tech companies love their little small text and buttons. Also, there's a lot of lack of patterns in eye pathing. It would be nice if every time we looked at an app, we knew it was going to follow the same rough patterns. And I'll have an example of this coming forward here. On top of that, another reason older adults have difficulty using technology is just their equipment barriers out there. And technology is constantly changing. We're always forced to buy a new device or roll out an update, and that makes it challenging for folks. Not to mention, a lot of folks are using ill-fitting, or maybe they were upsold at a local store. They told they need to buy a really expensive device when they probably didn't. And expense is a huge concern, especially for seniors. A lot of folks are on fixed income, right? expecting to pay another $800 every 8, 9 years is pretty tough for a lot of folks out there. And then finally, there are huge educational barriers, right? Remember when you used to buy a device, it used to come with one of those stacks of paper that was bound together and it told you everything you could do with that device and how to do it. No longer the case, right? You get a new phone, get a new computer, they just say, here you go, figure it out yourself. There's no classes out there. Plus, there's tons and tons of misinformation. If you try to Google search your problem these days, you're going to be met with outright scams to misinformation to just, it's just a frustrating experience in general. So the question is, where do seniors go for help? First things first, they probably having trouble with your phone or computer, folks probably turn to their family, right? And we want to say that it looks something like this, but in reality, it tends to look more like this, right? Um, I've told this story a million times, but I can sit down and work with any client for hours and hours and hours. But the minute my mom or my dad call me for some tech help, everybody just starts pulling their hair out. There's something about the interaction that just makes it bring out the worst in family dynamics, and it's really challenging. I should say I love my parents to death, but yeah, it's just challenging to work with friends and family with technology. Um, Next up, folks probably, who hasn't wasted hours and hours on the phone with tech support or the Comcast or AT&T phone line, right? That can be a maddening process. I already mentioned like online self-help, like searching for your problems on Google or a company's forums, tons and tons of misinformation, wrong information, and tons of outright scams that disproportionately harm older adults. On top of that, there are services like the Geek Squad and the Apple Store, and there are great people that work there, excellent folks. But one of the problems is they might not be there the next week. So they might not come to learn your unique wants, needs, and desires and how to best match. So to recap, our older adults have some unique challenges in our society. They have physical design, equipment, and educational barriers preventing them from adopting these tech solutions. The support out there is few and far between. It's woefully inadequate. And that is a shame because, man, theoretically, there are great solutions to the challenges that seniors face. Now, we also know that seniors who use technology have better overall health outcomes and lower rates of social isolation. So if you give mom or you give dad a computer or a phone and you actually show them how to use that, give them help, they're more connected with folks. They're taking care of more of their chores themselves. They're doing a lot and it actually helps their overall well-being. I've got a cool example of this. This is about a place called Tiger Place Senior Living in Missouri. It's one of those continuum of care senior living places. So they have independent living, assisted living, and memory care, and each one gets more and more expensive. They did a study where they implemented smart sensors for some of the residents, and they tracked two things. They tracked a person's sleep, how well they were sleeping at night, and then their gait, so how well they were walking. And if there was a change to either one of those things, that provided a clue that early medical intervention was needed, and the resident would get it. Um, all in all, residents who received the census stayed in independent living for 1.7 years longer and saved about $30,000 in medical. So this is a significant improvement here. Unfortunately, this is not commercially available yet, but it's on the horizon. So hopefully we'll be setting these up in folks' homes and other senior living places pretty soon. But yeah, I guess I would say any thoughts or questions at this point, and feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to take a sip of coffee.
I had a question that was emailed to me a little bit ago. It said, is there a desktop gadget that people can text photos to and those photos just show up on the screen?
So they do make, I wouldn't say a desktop gadget. Well, yes, they make smart photo screens that will just cycle through photos. And they have some where you can actually email a photo to a special personalized email address, and they will automatically go to that photo screen. And it's really nice. Yeah, for folks that are living apart, you just email the photos and they'll start appearing in the rotation. It's a really nice service. I don't know off the top of my head the name of the company that makes them. I think there are a few competitors. I will say they might come along with like a small subscription, like $4 or $5 a month, but it's a pretty cool option.
All right.
Cool.
This one says, Aura is a great smartphone frame. with no
Okay.
salesperson.
Yeah, Aura. Yeah, it's Rohit is pointing out. Yeah, Aura, Aura is a great smart photo frame. Thank you, Rohit. Yeah. All right. So one thing that I think is really important for folks, seniors especially, and people experiencing cognitive challenges is we as a society really need to understand modern scams and how scamming has changed. We have this impression that scammers, they're the nerd living in their mother's basement. They're low stakes. They're going to try to rip you off for 20 bucks in a parking lot, and maybe they're like lone wolves, right? But that's not the case anymore. Nowadays, scammers work for coordinated business operations. They follow tightly followed scripts and game plans. They have years of experience. They're extremely charming and convincing. They're really good at impersonating American accents these days, and it's even enhanced by artificial intelligence. And they're playing high stakes games. They're trying to get big chunks of money out of people and companies. And they use malicious phone calls, emails, text messages, websites, advertisements. And generally, their goal is to get you to give up personal information or payment information. And they love to target older adults. I love this picture here. This is from inside a scam call center in Mumbai, India. And what I like is that um, it shows the professional nature of the operation, right? These uniform setups. Everyone is wearing a collared shirt. And they might be tough to see depending on your zoom, but in the top right-hand corner, there is a mural of Steve Jobs with a motivational business quote. And I think this picture really illustrates how professional these operations are, right? These are folks that are going to their 9 to 5 job, and that is unfortunately to rip off our seniors, our retirees. Why do these guys like to target older adults so much? For a few reasons. One, we generally become more trusting with age. It's just a natural way that our brain changes, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a normal part of the aging process. Also, we're relative newcomers to the tech world. I like to say I was born with a keyboard in my hands. A lot of people, that's not the same case. So there's less experience with technology. Also, a lot of older adults have assets, right? You have a nest egg that you're depending on. Or all my friends, right? We're all broke. Millennials have it pretty tough these days. Finally, I think there's a loneliness factor too. And these guys are extremely charming. On the phone, they sound really sweet and friendly. And if you're lonely, it's nice to connect with a person that way. So people always ask me, like, what are signs something is a scam? How can I tell if it's a scam? And my answer, I take a counterintuitive approach. What I tell folks is don't look for signs something is a scam. Again, these are highly evolving, highly efficient businesses. As soon as there's an obvious tell that something is a scam, they'll fix it. And your old tips and tricks, they don't necessarily apply these days. So my second major tip for you all is to remember the rhyme, okay? And you can share this rhyme with whomever you want. If you ever receive a call, text message, email, pop up, anything, if it's out of the blue and they're rushing you, assume it's untrue. I can't stress this enough. And I love it so much when my parents send me an email, say, hey, is this a scam? Or I got this text message. Asking someone else is the most important thing you can do, okay? If it's out of the blue and they're rushing you, assume it's untrue. Okay. What should you do if you get a phone call from someone or an email? It might be an emergency, it might not. The most important thing to do is always talk to someone else, a family member, your tech savvy neighbor. You're always welcome to reach out to myself or ask Kevin. We're always happy to give our feedback on that. And if you ever receive a call, text message, email, if it's out of the blue and they're rushing you, assume it's untrue. Okay. Um, Let me go over like a couple common scams here because again, I think they're pretty important that folks are familiar with them. I have an example here. This is a client of mine. She's an 80-year-old female, lives with a partner who has special health conditions and needs 24-hour care. And she's fortunate in the sense that she has family that lives nearby. She is an avid shopper, routinely purchases items on eBay, but after making the latest purchase, she received the following summary screen. So she made the purchase and said, thank you for your order. We're shipping it here. This is your total. And she saw these big green continue buttons. And she thought, oh, eBay wants me to click on those. Actually, these are advertisements purchased by a bad actor. And when she clicked on them, it brought her to this spooky web page here that took over her whole screen. It blared sirens on her computer and said, "Warning, Apple security notification. Your device has this horrible virus. You need to call us, Apple. We are surely Apple right away." Fortunately, she called me and I was able to intervene on this on her behalf. But really, again, this is just a scam that was led to it. If she called that number, it would have gone to one of those scam call centers. I meant to mention this earlier though. Mumbai and Calcutta, India were once hotbeds for these kind of tech support scams that we see here, but they're actually everywhere now. All it takes is a laptop computer and an internet connection, and you're up and running. So we've seen scam call centers in Asia, Africa, here in the United States, in South America, anywhere now. So just wanted to highlight that too. Here's another example. If you have a Windows computer, you might be familiar with this screen. Again, it goes full screen and it takes over your speakers. It can be really disorienting, okay? And that's one thing that scammers really prey upon is that, in a nice environment like this where lights are on, we're all together, it's going to be really obvious that these are scams. But if it's late at night and you see this popping up on your computer, it can be really alarming, really scary. And it can get your wheels spinning quite a bit and get you to not think clearly. So that's why I really say, if it's out of the blue and they're rushing you, assume it's untrue. Okay. Yep. Highlight here. So my next big tip for you guys are ad blockers. Okay. And these are web browser, they're called extensions. You can add to Chrome, Safari, Firefox to block advertisements. And so the other day I was reading an article on Forbes and there's a video playing ad on the top and a video playing ad on the bottom, and this big banner ad on the side. When I turn on my ad blocker, it suddenly looks like this, a coherent news article. Okay. So tip number 3 is use an advertisement blocker. I really like this company, AdGuard. You just need the free version. They have paid options, but the free version should be enough for everybody. It blocks so much. It makes the internet a lot more friendly for older adults and folks that are experiencing memory issues. I have a client who recently has Parkinson's, and it's affecting his frontal lobe, and it's affecting his decision making and impulse control. And you get all these advertisements popping up on his Facebook. So he would be tempted to click them, and then they just naturally bring him to different malicious websites that were trying to either steal his data or download a virus. So we put an ad blocker on his computer, and it prevented him from seeing those advertisements in the first place. So I think AdGuards are a great resource for everybody out there. I will want to point out that Chrome is the world's most popular web browser. A lot of advertisement blockers do not play nicely with Chrome anymore, right? Google is a company that makes their billions on advertisements. You can try using uBlock Origin Lite, or I really like the web browser Firefox. I think folks should switch to Firefox. Yep. I hope that's exciting and interesting to folks. But, okay. Going forward, I got a few tips for making your device more friendly for folks out there. I want to talk about scanning, okay? Looking at ways that tech companies have made technology difficult for everyday folks. The name of the component that you look at, right? The part of your phone or the part of your computer that you look at, right? Sometimes it's called the screen. Sometimes it's called the display, the touch screen, the monitor, the panel, LCD, OLED, LED, right? It's got a ton of names. And again, I wish like tech companies would just settle on one. Because if you're an older adult or if you're experiencing memory issues, if you're talking on the phone with someone and they keep bouncing back and forth between monitor and panel and screen, that can be pretty disorienting. You might want to highlight that looking at the screen is particularly hard for older adults because our point of focus gets more narrow, our peripheral vision tends to shrink, our eyes get slower, right? Our eyes are moving around their muscles in the back, and as we get older, they be naturally. Our eyes get more tired sooner, and we're not used to looking at screens in general. We don't always intuitively understand the layout of tabs. So what looks like a phone-sized screen to a teenager would actually look something more like this for older adults, okay? So my tip here is for just scanning the screen. I want to encourage folks, we love reading books. They follow a forward pattern, right? Left to right, top to bottom. And this is intuitive and easy for us to understand. But apps and websites constantly break that pattern. This app might look familiar to a lot of iPhone users out there. This is the standard iPhone emailing app, and it's got a beautiful flow to it. You start at the top and you write the subject and you write the CC or VCC. And so you write the recipient and then the subject, and then you write the body of the email. But then to actually send the email, you have to break that pattern and know that there is an unlabeled arrow in the top right-hand corner that somehow means silence. So what I tell folks, yeah, it would be a lot more helpful if they just put a little send button, a big send button right down there would follow that pattern. But unfortunately, they break it. So I just tell people when you're looking at your phone or your computer, scan it like a book. Take in the whole screen. Don't try to keep up with those tech designers and the way they want your eyes to bounce around. Left to right, top to bottom. Take in the whole picture and go from there. Hopefully you'll find the icon, text, or button where you might need to tap and go forward here. Cool. A little bit more about the screen. I want to point out that it comes in 3 layers. On the outside, there's a layer of protective glass that I've broken many, many times. Beneath that, there's a touch panel or digitizer, which senses where we're touching on the screen. And beneath that is the LCD, which makes the colors that we look at. I want to highlight that your smartphone does not work like a traditional button where you press. It's not sensing the pressure of your touch. So it actually senses the electrical current of your skin. So it doesn't matter how hard you tap, whether it's light as a feather or hard as a hammer. What I see a lot of folks do is if they tap on their screen, but the phone doesn't recognize it, they try to tap harder. That's actually not what you're supposed to do. So also, it won't work with regular gloves right now. Clothing manufacturers know this, so they use special fibers in the tips of gloves, so they'll still work. Also, it makes this phone screen more challenging to use for older adults because as we get older, the skin on our finger tends to get thinner and less conductive over time. So just controlling your device is really tricky. Generally, what I tell people is start with the fingertip, okay? When you're tapping on your phone, using that tip of your finger is usually the most accurate. But if your phone's not picking up, not registering that touch, try using the finger pad where your fingerprint is. That's generally a little bit more conductive. On top of that, you've probably seen these rubber tip styluses all around town. They're great. You can tie a little string and tie it to your phone case or hold it in place with a magnet. I think all older adults and seniors should be using these phone styluses. If you have arthritis or difficulty holding onto it, they make special little grips that you can order online. Finally, it might just be a real estate issue. You can turn any tablet or iPad into your phone. You can make and receive calls on your tablet. So if you just need bigger icons in general, more larger text in general, you can just get an iPad. It's a little unwieldy to put in your pocketbook and carry around town with, but it can be a great place for folks that are less mobile and stay in their home. And then finally, my big tip is to get used to using your smart assistant. Get used to using your voice to control your devices here. Smart assistant. Smart assistants make harnessing the benefits of technology easier for many older adults and folks with cognitive challenges especially, okay? What are smart assistants? They are a little robot that sits in your device and it just listens to you and tries to answer your questions and commands, right? You might be familiar with Siri, which is by Apple, Alexa, which is by Amazon, and there's also the Google Assistant by Google. I don't know why she doesn't get a nickname, but she's the Google Assistant. These are great. You can do so much with your smart assistant. Big one being that you can get help in emergency. And I think back to my nana, my grandmother, who in her 80s, she was cleaning above her sliding glass doors. She was standing on a little stool and she fell and broke her hip. And she was down for maybe 12 hours or so before she was able to get help. Okay. If she had a Siri or an Alexa, if that was available to her, she could have used her voice to call for help in that situation. On top of that, you can use your smart assistant to send calls, emails, text message. I can say, hey, Google, text mom, what time is dinner? And it will send that text for me. I don't have to open up my phone, find her contact, tap on the tiny keyboard. I just use my voice to do it for me. You can also set it up to order goods and groceries. There's a little setup involved, but you can always just, tell Siri to call the nearest Domino's and she'll do it for you. On top of that, you can keep yourself entertained, listening to music, radio, podcasts, pretty much any song by any artist you can possibly think of is available, all with your voice. managing calendars and reminders. We had a big project with Glacier Hills, a senior living place here in Ann Arbor, and we set up smart assistants, smart screens for all the residents there. And the number one thing that they used it for was cooking. They love, if they throw the pasta in the boiling water, they'd say, hey Google, set a timer for 8 minutes, and it would do it for them to keep track of that. So on top of that, accessing news and information, controlling your device and apps. I can't tell you how great it is. Instead of trying to fumble around your phone, you can just say, hey Google, or hey Siri, turn on the flashlight, and it will do it for you. Not to mention, you can get little tabs that you put on your keys. You can say, hey Siri, find my keys. She'll find your keys for you. Getting information about exercise, maps and directions. They can do live translation now, so you can actually speak to someone in a foreign language and get cooking instructions. There's so much that you can do with these things. Going ahead, it's generally, after you get them set up, it's a two-step process. You get their attention by usually saying, hey Siri or hey Google. You can also press and hold the side button on some phones, and then you just ask your question or issue your command. Hey Siri, what's the weather? Hey Alexa, call Allie. What time does Costco close? All this information just at the tip of your tongue as opposed to the tip of your fingertips. Ahead here, tons of things you could do. What time is the Michigan game? What's the score of the Michigan game? What time does this business close? Call this business. What's on my calendar today? Calling people on speakerphone, FaceTiming people, sending emails. No more fussing with the tiny keyboard. No more searching for apps to open. You can just say, hey Siri, open Zoom, and she'll open the Zoom app for you. No more translating those little icons. What does this mean on your computer? It's way more intuitive to me. I also think it's a lifetime way to harness the benefits of technology, because as we get older, our vision's only going to get weaker. Our fingers are only going to get stiffer, and that's going to make using devices harder and harder. But generally, for most people, our voice tends to stay with us the longest. Let's just harness technology. So big key takeaway, practice using your smart assistant. If you have an iPhone, Siri is ready to go. You might need to check in your settings. On Android phones, my Android friends in the audience, the setup's a little bit more involved. You have to download the Google Assistant. But again, I wish I could give step-by-step instructions and hands-on help with everyone, but I can't stress it enough. Learn and get comfortable with your voice, with your smart assistants. Even folks who have Xfinity or AT&T TV plans, if you look at your remote, there should be a little microphone button near the middle, and you can push that. And it's so much easier to push that and say, open Netflix or turn on PBS. And last tip here is getting really comfortable with using your voice to control. All right. Next thing I want to highlight here, about 15 minutes left. I want to highlight some fun devices. So I think these are the devices that most older adults and seniors can use. And number one thing I have for folks is smartwatches. I think all older adults can really benefit from a smartwatch. It's just a special watch that connects to the internet, which allows it to do more features, right? It's got a built-in smart assistant. So you can talk to Siri, you can pretend you're James Bond and call someone using the watch on your wrist. It's got built-in fall and crash detection. And I've actually tested this. I put on a client's smartwatch, I've fallen on their bed, and then after a little while it says, hey, I detected you had a hard fall. Do you want me to contact emergency services? And if you say yes, or if you don't respond, it will contact emergency services. It will share your GPS, where your current location is, and it will also send a notification to all your emergency contacts. It also has crash detection. So if you were in an automobile and you had a crash, it would do the same thing. And what's kind of funny is when Apple first introduced this feature on their devices, for whatever reason, people on roller coasters, their watches thought they were in crashes. So every time they got off the roller coaster, they had to say, I didn't have a car accident. You didn't need to call 911. But they fixed that problem in a few days. But that was kind of a funny little glitch. But on top of that, you can, again, use it to call emergency services, set reminders. There's great heart monitoring aspects to them. You can track your heart rate, sleep, your respiration, the number of steps you take, how's your gait, et cetera, et cetera. The main ones are Apple and Google, and there's also Samsung. But typically I say if you have an iPhone, stick to the Apple Watch. If you have an Android phone, those Google smartwatches or those Samsung smartwatches are pretty good too. There's also more fitness-based ones like Fitbit and Garmin. Those are good options as well. I got a couple case studies. I see a couple questions in the chat. I'll get to those in a second. Case study number one is I have an 84-year-old male client. He was living with his wife. He was an avid walker. He would walk about 5 miles every day, twice a day. So in the morning, he'd go for about 2 miles. In the afternoon, he'd go for about three. He was not comfortable with technology and prefers his flip phone. He was pretty confident and liked his flip phone. He developed mild cognitive impairments and sometimes had difficulty finding his way home. Um, so we provided him an Apple Watch with a cellular data plan, so he didn't even need an iPhone. And if he got lost, he would just pull out his flip phone and say, "Hey, Sally, I need help getting directions home." And they would use the watch to see his location and just give verbal step-by-step directions on way to go, right? Um, Now, a more tech-savvy person could use their smart assistant to get directions and navigate that way, but this was just a right solution for this person. Another client here, this was an 80-year-old female. She was somewhat tech savvy. She went to a couple of our classes. Her doctor recommended she purchase an Apple Watch to help monitor her recent arrhythmia diagnosis. Just help keep an eye on things. She began tracking and sharing that data with her medical team. What was interesting was they actually identified a sleep issue. She's not getting enough deep sleep. She was fine on REM and light sleep, but not enough deep sleep. So what they did was she bought a new mattress and pillows, and she actually reported that effect had positive effect on her sleeping and therefore led to better cognition and overall well-being. So pretty cool on the smartwatches here. I'll pop up the chat here. Okay. All right.
I took
Yes,
care of the first question, but the second one,
thank you.
yeah.
I
How
see
much privacy are you giving up with these smart
I,
devices?
I, yes, the big question is how much privacy are you giving up? The answer is a lot. This is a deep rabbit hole that we can go down for hours and hours and hours. My question and request to you would be how often have you brought this up with your local politicians? Because I think this is a societal issue that we all should be addressing, right? There are better consumer protection laws in Europe that we should be modeling ourselves after because I know of um, a certain smart mattress brand that tracks your sleep and actually shares that data and sells that data so they can see like if you're having disturbances in your sleep, maybe when you're on Facebook, you might start seeing advertisements for sleeping pills or something like that, which I think is a huge invasion of privacy. So the answer is how much privacy are you giving up? The answer is very complicated, and there is a give or take. Yes, if you, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but a lot. And again, if it's a concern for you, I really want to start people pressure your local politician, ask if they're involved in the issue, and ask what they're doing to help. I really can't stress that enough. It's a big issue. Thank you for that good question, putting me on the spot there. Um, Another technology I want to highlight are just these smart bulbs, right? These are, again, internet connected light bulbs. You can control them with your voice or from your phone. These are deceptively great, right? You can use your voice to turn them on and off. You can control them with your phone. What's really nice is they can make any light dimmable. I know when my parents remodeled their house, they splurged a little bit to get the fancy dimmer switches on this, but this is nice. You can make any light bulb dimmable with these guys. There's an automation aspect to it, right? So you can set an outdoor light to turn on at dusk, or you can set a lamp in your bedroom to turn on at a certain time. And there's a safety aspect to that, right? Um, Also, they can come in cool colors. If you ever drive downtown Ann Arbor or any college town, if you look up in the high rises, you'll see some like blue and purple lights. If you're throwing some parties, it might be great, but probably not a great feature for everybody. But that's an option there. But I want to highlight these are surprisingly useful. I had a 62-year-old client, so not really old, but he had recent major knee surgery that put him out. So he was using a wheelchair, and even the act of rolling over in bed caused him significant discomfort. So we installed voice control smart bulbs throughout his house, and that was a big help. He didn't need to stand up and walk over to switch off the light bulb. When he was done reading, he could just say, hey, Google, turn off the light. Hey, Alexa, turn off the light. Often smart bulbs won't have a dramatic effect on the quality of life, but it is really, I think it's a pretty nice feature. Especially if you're coming home from at night, the lights, it's dark outside, you're carrying groceries in both hands. Just being able to tell your smart assistant to turn on your lights would be a big help. I see Marjorie asking, what is Ask Kevin? I'll touch back based on that at the end of the talk. Yes. Another technology I want to highlight is I'm going to ask this question. Is your TV remote a nightmare? Is it really difficult to use? Does it have a bunch of unlabeled symbols, a little scroll wheel? Is it tough using your television? What I recommend is everybody consider a Roku. Rokus are great. You plug them in the back of your TV and it makes any smart TV a smart TV. So you can get all your apps on it, your Netflix, your Disney. If you have a Comcast subscription, you can get all the same TV that you're watching on your traditional cable to the streaming device here. So it's really nice. Folks that are paying for 3, 4, 5, 6 TV boxes, you actually don't have to pay that monthly $12 for each TV box. You can just get a Roku. It will do the same thing for you. It'll pay for itself in a few months. You can add apps and streaming services. What I really like is they're uniform between devices, right? A lot of folks, they bought one TV 5 years ago and they're buying a new TV and they're completely different experiences. But if you have a Roku in every room, it's a uniform experience. It should be really comfortable again, especially for folks with cognitive challenges. They seem to have what I would say are the simplest remotes, the most basic up and down, a home button and an OK button in the middle. They also have voice control, so you can just push a button, say open PBS or turn on ABC, and it will do it for you. One little cute feature is some of them have earbuds that you can plug into the remote. So if you have someone in the house, you can watch your TV without disturbing them. A little case study. This is an 85-year-old client. She was living alone. She was widowed. She was a Russian national, only spoke Russian, and she loved watching her Russian soap operas on RTV. Well, when the Ukrainian war broke out, all the cable providers dropped the network. But we still found one app that would stream RTV, but it required this awful remote on the right side. To open the app, she would have to push the home button, push the towards the right, but it wasn't like a clear where she was supposed to push. It was an absolute nightmare, and she just wasn't technically experienced enough to do that. So what we did was we bought her a Roku for that simpler remote, and we added colored stickers to it. And we wrote down and rehearsed the pattern. So she would press the green button twice, then right, then the start button once, the yellow button twice, right? We gave her color-coded directions, and then she was able to watch her Russian soaps going on, and that's kind of what it looked like there. That was the end result of the remote. That was really fun. That was my babushka. I called her my babushka. Finally here, my last most high-tech solution to the most frustrating tech issue, and that is folks should start recording their passwords alphabetically in a discrete book, okay? I know a lot of cybersecurity experts will tell you not to do this, but a lot of these books you can take off the sleeve, tuck them on your bookshelf. If the robber breaks into your house, they're not going to go rifling through your books to find your password book, okay? There are a few things why I want to highlight this. Okay, the average American has over 250 passwords to manage now. About 2/3 of Americans reuse their passwords, which is a huge cybersecurity issue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the most used password, which has appeared in 727 million unique credentials. So I want to say, people, no more sticky notes, loose sticky notes, no more folders with loose papers or the chicken scratch with the arrows running the password scratched out and arrows and dates. Just get one of these books. They can be so helpful, again, for folks with cognitive impairments, but also, God forbid if something happens to you or a family member, these can be extremely useful for next of kin. If they need to access your health portal or if they need to access your bank accounts, this can be a great benefit for folks. So I think that's about it for me today. If you have any more questions, don't feel free to post them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. But yeah, thanks so much for coming. That phone number on the left, that goes to the office line if you want to schedule an appointment with us, or you can email us at kevin@askkevin.com, or we help with any kind of tech issues that you might be having. What I tell people is just write down any tech-related questions, frustrations, and sticking points, and reach out, and we'll rip through that list together. But Stephanie, that's all I've got. Thanks so much for having me. I hope it was informative for folks.
Great. Thank you very much, James. That was excellent. We do have time for a couple questions, and I can include this information in the follow-up email as well that you all will get tomorrow.
Oh,
You can put any questions either in the chat or the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on both of those. And meanwhile, I will send out the evaluation. Yeah. How do we get a copy of these slides? Do you want to, you can send me, well, I already have your slides, but if you want to send me this updated version, I can turn it into a PDF and send them out to everyone who attended today.
I see the question. If the microphone fails on an Android phone, is there any way to solve it? You're asking the tough questions. My answer is it depends. It could be a software issue, like with the phone itself there's a glitch causing it to fail, or it could be physically failing. If the microphone itself, the physical component has failed, it's probably just most cost effective to swap out and buy a new phone. Unfortunately, it's kind of the society we live in today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you found it interesting. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or thoughts. Yeah, I think I'll sneak out of here, Stephanie.
Yeah, that
Or
sounds good.
oh, I see. Okay. Amanda asked a question in the Q&A. Do you have a recommendation for a best smart device specifically for heart monitoring? I want to be careful that this is not medical advice, but if you have an iPhone, I would stick with the Apple smartwatch. It checks your pulse and everything. If there's a specific concern, I would probably ask your doctor or a cardiologist for a recommendation. And if you have an iPhone, you want a consumer device, I would get the Apple smartwatch. If you have an Android phone, if it's a Samsung, I'd get the Samsung smartwatch. Otherwise, the Google smartwatch would be totally fine. I would stick to those brand names that you've heard before: Apple, Samsung, Google. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you at our next speaker series in July. Hi, everybody.